you could hide a color in the twinkling of an eye, and then continue onward with that same speed to fly? Do you think that you could ever, through all eternity, find out the generation where gods began to be? Or see the grand beginning, where space did not extend? Or view the lost creation, where gods and matter end? Methinks the spirit whispers, no man has found pure space, nor seen the outside curtains, where nothing has a place. The works of God continue, and worlds and lives abound. Improvement and progression have one eternal round. There is no end to matter, there is no end to space, there is no end to spirit, there is no end to race, there is no end to virtue, there is no end to light, there is no end to wisdom, there is no end to light, there is no end to union, there is no end to youth, there is no end to priesthood, there is no end to truth. There is no end to glory, there is no end to love, there is no end to being, there is no death above. There is no end to glory, there is no end to love, there is no end to being, there is no death above. It's monthly Mormon Mondays. It's time for the secret handshake. Tune in and reach through the veil. It's time for monthly Mormon Monday.
Welcome, another episode of Monthly Mormon Monday. It's not Monday. Why is it called that? Who cares? We're all here. It's a live stream. We got me, Paranoid American. Actually, let me do it in order, okay? So it starts with Heidi Love, the Exmo, then Paranoid American, the Maymo, and then we've got Andreas Xirtus, the Nemo. And
oh no, I'm not the Nemo. I'm not like Nemo.
No. How about the Nemo?
I'll be all right.
Nemo.
Nemo? Yeah. Wait, well, what did I get wrong? What's Nemo?
There's a dude who's Nemo, and like,
oh
yeah, on no account do I like him. Yeah,
okay. Yeah.
Do you know about Nemo the Mormon? You don't know about that
idea.
Dude? Oh, bro, Douglas Stilgo, I think he's called.
We called him. He got it wrong. It's Numo.
Yeah,
Numo. Sorry,
I'm Neo Numo, maybe Neomo.
There you go.
I like Neomo.
Nemo.
you gotta at some point look at like Nemo the Mormon though, because he's like
check it out.
He's on the wave of being like an anti-Mormon, but like he's a member still. Like he just is. I don't know. There's a whole thing, but he just seems to trash the church a lot. So I wouldn't really want to be associated with Nemo. Yeah.
I mean, some of us.
You wouldn't want to be.
No, just kidding.
Not metric, right?
No, I like Heidi. Heidi's adorable. If someone
I get by.
Yeah.
Well,
I'm also mentally.
Go ahead, Heidi.
I can accept the fact that other people have different opinions and not trash the person, just the theology. So
yeah. Plus, like it's not even like when you're trashing the theology, you're still smiling. There's something more adorable. Again, it's adorable. It's different.
Thank you. I'll take
it. The durability factor is higher. Yeah.
Well, we got a really loose theme today. So I've got a bunch of live streams. I'm trying to do them all on space and moon and maybe even like Kubrick theme. And I couldn't figure out any good Mormon Kubrick sort of ties.
I have 3 pages of space Mormon stuff for you.
So no, we're gonna basically do a bunch of space stuff. I watched a documentary that was supposed to be about a Mormon astronaut and it wasn't. So that'll be. But I also started getting really deep into Battlestar Galactica because of some other weird tangent that I went down on. So it seems like
it wasn't even Mormonism that led you to Battlestar. Like how
it was actually an episode of Ancient Aliens where one of the guys made a claim that Moroni came from the Pleiades star system. I think it was David Wilcox, and then somebody else made like a rebuttal to David Wilcox's claim about the Pleiades, but then they cited this song that inspired that intro that I played. It's called "If You Could Hide to Kolob." And that,
by the way, that was a banger. That I
Back in the
seldom.
day?
No, just now, even because I love that song. I have a version of it, and I still like feel like I have to step up my game after that. That was
there you go.
It was really good. It feels good. Honestly, people need to listen. If you could hide a Kolob, you would. Just be honest. Like you would totally hide.
I mean,
a
if it were real and they didn't go back on everything,
sure. So that's what I think we can get into, though, because if you think about Pratt and what they were really talking about in terms of luminary realms and places you could channel, that's way more real than NASA. And I think that you're looking at space TV shows as it's safe because it's sci-fi, so kids can talk about anything in a sci-fi show. And B, it's what people believe in. This is the new religion. They believe in this idea.
And fun fact, Mormons are obsessed with space and Star Trek and Harry Potter and anything fantastical. They are
and Star Wars.
This actually makes so much sense now. Like this is literally just connecting. But when I grew up, I want to say like 8 or 9. The kid that lived right behind me, he came from a Mormon family. I didn't even know what the heck that meant, except that he couldn't come out and play on Sundays. That was like the only thing that I really took from that. And the other thing that I distinctly remember was that even though his parents were super strict, the second Star Trek came on, the whole family got together and it like transformed into something that I had never seen before. My mom liked Star Trek, but it wasn't like a full house family event where everyone stop doing the taxes, stop whatever you're doing, and Star Trek. And I was like, why are they so in? And now it makes so much more sense that this was almost them going to church. And man, if I grew up going
Star Trek is the establishment of Zion in a lot of ways.
I would love to have gotten my religion from Star Trek, or at least had that as a possibility. I just thought it was a silly sci-fi show.
Well, first off, Star Trek is a satanic space utopian Marxist show, right? And I say those with citations. Gene Roddenberry was a friend of, Anton LaVey. He was a contributor to the Church of Satan. If you read the first screenplay, Captain Pike, is the Masonic reference, is the first captain in the pilot episode of Star Trek in the original series. And the way it works is on a ship, usually you have sort of this viceroy, and it was common to have a priest with you as your viceroy. Instead of having a Jesuit priest, here you have a sort of logician, the satanic logician who looks like Anton LaVey, right? In the original story, there you go. There's Pike right there, Captain Christ Pike, right? And he's got his in the original screenplay, Spock looks more even than he does now, like Anton LaVey, and you can kind of see it now. Like he kind of looks like Anton. Spock has this, the eyebrows and everything like that, but he was more. C with it, but you can kind of like it puts Spock and Anton LaVey next to each other, and you can see the original plan was to have him be originally like he was supposed to be more bald.
It's all the eyebrows. It's 100% the eyebrows.
Those are all that's left maybe of the original version, but like
and
there was definitely
the jaw shape too is straight down like a square kind of.
He would have had less control over that though.
Yeah, true.
The nose, okay, yeah, I see a bunch of different similarities.
Yep. I totally see it. That's why he didn't have hair, because then
I'm Team Nimoy. If we have to compare him, I'm Team Nimoy all the way over Team Anton.
And he's doing the Shekinah, which is the feminine sign of God, which he learned in his Shabbat, right? So there's a lot of like spiritual ism there. But Gene Roddenberry wanted rules. He said that first off, we're in a post-scarcity civilization. There's less lying. These soap operas are all about misinformation and miscommunication and like the drama that goes on with that. He had rules against things like that. And all of his writers had problems with it because they're like, how am I supposed to make a show that doesn't do these things? Like, we'll do it. Like, make a show that's about pure communication where people have solutions to things, figure out how to make it interesting anyway. And so for a lot of people, I think Star Trek is their idea of a utopia, but the problem is it's just a romanticized fascist space future, because you still have lots of scarcity, you still have lots of disparity. It's not equalized. The military, everyone's trying to get into the military, and so it's really not that different than Starship Troopers. It's just that in Starship Troopers, they cut outside of the propaganda and you get to kind of experience their real lives more. Star Trek is just pure propaganda. And so you constantly feel like they're the good guys. The NSA is boldly, knowing what no one's known before while secretly hiding out from people that haven't quite achieved clearance. And that this is just like a social normative, right, for their entire society. Like billions of people in one secret agency.
I agree with that wholeheartedly. I guess I never really realized that, and if we're comparing it to Battlestar Galactica, in Star Trek, the hope is in the Enterprise, it's in the system, it's in the state. That's where you put your hope. But in Battlestar Galactica, the hope is this thing that you're constantly searching for. I guess Earth, right? But it's really, Earth kind of stands for something that you can't prove ever exists, which makes it weird because you're trying to find your way to this thing that if you find it, the hope goes away,
That's specifically only in the new Battlestar Galactica, like the second series, right? It's not untrue. It's just that there's more to it than that. I would say that Battlestar Galactica is very much about Mormonism, and it's rather Brighamist Mormonism. But it's the idea that everything in the universe, like Chris Pratt said, like there are more gods than there are molecules or atoms in the universe.
Nothing is made in vain, right, Xirtus?
Right.
Nothing
And I have this quote.
Yeah.
I got this quote from
this Brigham quote too.
The Brigham quote says, "How many gods there are, I do not know, but there was never a time when there were not gods and worlds, and men were not passing through the same ordeals that we are now passing through. That course has been from all eternity, and it is and will be to all eternity." And they summarize it better in that video that you sent me from Battlestar Galactica, and he basically just says like everything that ever has been will be again, or something to that. Like
Right.
They were very influenced, I believe, by Swedenborg. I do believe Joseph Smith read Swedenborg.
I think it's reasonable. But it also like the idea of just universally that idea of cosmically intelligences preceding material, and that there's so much capacity for intelligence that every piece of material has the capacity to form into intelligence. That's playing into the idea that Cylons, these like machines, they're going through apotheosis too. So we're in this big thing where we're wondering about where our origin story is, which plays into Star Trek as well, like why Star Trek has this progenitor race that's created all of it, and why everyone looks the same except with different ears. That's all because we're star-seeded, according to Star Trek. And it's similarly in the the Battlestar Galactica thing. You have Kobol instead of Kolob, but that's basically the main difference. And then you have a dozen or so Zodiac arranged, kind of related to the Romanized pantheon. And each one of them has a different culture, and they're nuanced. And it's kind of the same way that the humans have different tribes. We have 12 tribes and maybe a 13th lost tribe. So there's a lot of that, and everyone's trying to reach it a different way. Some humans or some civilizations are more materialistic, and they are measuring the experience of spirit, right? What's a paranoid American? I mean,
that made me laugh. Sorry.
Yeah.
Isn't that like most? It's just like most unmedicated.
I actually realize, and people have called me out a few times, that I'm probably the least like paranoid person that they know. Although that only speaks to the small crew that I'm starting to run with. That if I'm the least paranoid person, anyway, Melissa also made a really great point in here that I wanted to pull back up, that it's no longer necessary to be Mormon to believe where science meets spirituality, which is kind of, I mean, I identify with that statement not because I'm Mormon, but because Mormonism
Right.
is the newest sort of religion, and America, if you believe in space, is the
Except for
country
Scientology.
that we
Mhm.
kind of discovered, space in a very practical way. So how else would you not have a religion that fully embraces sci-fi and space travel? Because almost no other religion that I'm aware of, okay, Raelianism and Scientology and Mormonism, but like anything that wasn't created within the last couple centuries, none of them really embrace like modern sci-fi the same way that Mormonism really could. But now you've got more, so Mormonism might be becoming old. Like if you make
Well,
more new religions, it loses some of that novelty.
they took it all out and put them all in the Journal of Discourses too, so it's not Mormonism anymore.
So I
'Cause it's all
really
gone.
want to
I think
understand
I would
this.
just say though, I would also say that there's a difference in 19th century Mormonism, Mormonclature, which is like patent pending, trademark that word. They used to look at things more like celestial luminaries. It wasn't that they were looking at it like NASA. And so in the 20th century, because science is a thing that is being taught, and Mormonism goes very strongly with the let's go with the flow of society. And they say, sure, evolution, let's figure out how to make it work. Sure, science, let's figure out how to make it work. And they don't even wait for it to completely make sense. They're just like, okay, well, if everyone's going with it, fine. We'll just like we don't, it doesn't really affect us enough to care to fight against it. So we'll just try to like figure out how that could fit into the paradigm without it being like super doctrinal, because it's just the Catholic Church didn't do that. And they just don't want to be like what the Catholic Church did, because the Catholic Church stopped people from talking about these things. And there were really interesting, like we talked earlier about Teilhard Chardin, like the many Jesuits that were working in science, that advanced science, they were forbidden a lot of the time by their own church.
I don't know. Mormons are pretty fussy about talking about Kolob now. Like the mainstream people are like, that is not something we're discussing. And
well, that's true, but I think also that's a whole other bummer.
my
That's a
mind.
whole
Yeah.
whole other bummer. Like the what's
Yeah.
going on with like Russell P. Nelson telling people not to look into the esoteric and not to discuss like the more esoteric things.
Even as a kid, I was told you do not do astrology, you do not look into this stuff. And I'm old, remember?
yeah.
Older
I
next
think,
week.
I think astrology is also one that they were like looking at Leviticus, and it says like don't do astrology. So they're trying to figure out what to do with that. But that's even changed a bit now, because there's a lot of people pushing against what the Deuteronomists said, and they're saying, okay, like, well, as Mormons, you have to follow the Deuteronomists. Seems like Christ didn't. Seems like, is the whole mission of Christ not to argue, protest, rebel, and die martyring himself against the Deuteronomist reforms? And then also Paul, because then the Catholics say everything, even the Protestants, they like follow everything Paul does. Do we have to? There's no tenet that says you have to follow any of those rules. So it's kind of more open in a lot of ways. I think though people they're scared of talking about Kolob because it is a luminary thing that is beyond, some like sci-fi movie. It is probably more real in an exorcist kind of way than it is like a NASA kind of way. I mean, the idea of like reaching a realm and having frequencies that we experience, that seems like a very true esoteric thing. And I feel like that's also the point in Battlestar Galactica. You got these spirits that these robots are channeling, and they're finding ways of getting that energy into themselves that's already pre-existing. So, like, the idea of finding an Earth, he thinks it's a lie at first because he doesn't know for a fact that it exists. But, like, divine synchronicities in the universe either manifest it or lead them towards where it really exists, because all of potential. Because where are they in space? They're in all potential, right?
When
They are
you
on the
said-
moon. They're 6-foot Quakers.
With
Don't
Quakers,
you
yeah.
know?
I was gonna say,
Wait, what?
you know about that,
And
right?
on the sun. And on the
No.
sun.
On the
I
moon,
don't
there
know
are 6 foot tall
about that.
Quakers. On the
We're
moon, there's
gonna have a
it's
fun
completely.
chat.
This is completely reasonable, though. That's like the least weird thing.
Okay.
Has this been retconned yet?
No, this is real. This is
Yeah.
like real. Yeah. Well,
It's not in the Book of Mormon, but I
The
think he
Mormons.
says it. He doesn't. Where does he say it again? It's
So
like I think
he
in the
talked-
women's magazine, like it's in the women's
Yes,
journal.
Eliza
Okay.
Snow actually made that song High Kolob because of this talk that Joseph Smith gave them about the Quakers on the moon that live 1,000 years and they're 6 feet tall and
Yeah.
they dress like the Quakers. Yes.
Yeah.
Joseph Smith and the moon. No,
I'm
how
not
did I not
playing.
know about this? This is
How did you
exactly
not?
what I was-
What?
Moon Quakers.
Did
And
Joseph
also
Smith teach that men who look like Quakers live on the moon? Possibly.
Yes.
The source comes from 1881, who heard it from Philo Dibble, which is one of my favorite names I've heard now. Apparently recalled from 40 years earlier. So this is literally a story of a story of a story of someone that remembered it from 40 years before they told
there's
it.
more than
Yeah.
one account. There's also more than one account, including
Well-
Brigham himself. So
There's
So-
in the
there's
Journal of Discourses,
I
page,
feel
the
like
Journal of
there's got to
Discourses,
be a kernel.
13.
There's at least a kernel, which I agree with Heidi. There's at least a kernel of truth to this story having occurred. It might have been a little
So-
different than this, and like you know,
Yeah.
it might have been that there was like a reference made that like they're as tall as Quakers, or like that maybe they congregate
6
like
feet.
Quakers.
They were
or something.
6 feet tall and dressed like Quakers. They
But
lived
But I could
1,000
also,
years.
but Heidi, I could also imagine 100 women
this
at
was
the
in the
Women's
Journal of
Relief
Discourses.
Society completely confusing this somehow.
This
I
is
could also see
actually a
that.
quote from Brigham Young that there are moon inhabitants and sun inhabitants, and that Adam and Eve came from the sun, and millions of inhabitants dwell there. And they were cast out after they sinned. And this is Journal of Discourses, the 13th one, page 271. And I have multiple other quotes about this stuff. It's wild.
Yeah, we got, according to sunstone.org, Joseph Smith and his first presidency once taught Adam and Eve were
That's Joseph
transplanted from another
Fielding.
planet, but later
That's
rejected
a
this
different
idea.
guy.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a different. This Joseph Fielding Smith is not Joseph Smith. It gets confusing, but it's not the same guy. But yes, same.
However,
Brigham Young,
Fielding, yeah. And then there's Fielding Smith versus F. Smith, which is for Fielding. Just forget about it.
It's so confusing. Yeah.
Well,
I don't know.
I want to get one thing clear though about Kolob. Sorry, I'm going to get those confused because of Battlestar Galactica now. But Kolob, for any Mormon hierarchy that's listening, anyone that's got like the Willy Wonka pass to do anything they want, I just want to be clear as a non-Mo, possible Mo, that's not the weird thing. Like the Kolob thing doesn't make me want to ridicule Mormonism, and it doesn't turn me away from Mormonism. If anything, it's one of the very few redeeming qualities that makes it interesting. And it's silly if you try to retcon this thing. There's other things that could be retconned.
Yeah,
Before
I
you
don't think
retcon
that's
This
what I
goes
think. I don't know if I'm
yeah.
concerned. I don't think it's retconning as much as hiding. There's a lot of people that just don't want to talk about their secrets. By the way, this is a photograph of Quakers on the moon. This is
And there is, they made him, no.
Just from 1881, that
Yeah.
photo.
They
Daguerreotype,
said that
actually.
They were actually normal looking and only 6 feet tall because I guess people were short then or something. But this goes clear into almost the 2000s where they're still talking about Kolob, to your point.
Yeah.
Even Neil A. Maxwell says, we are not alone. Many inhabited places. This is a universe of order in which Kolob is set nigh. And there's a whole bunch of quotes I have about Kolob, but it didn't die out like early on. I remember Kolob teachings like in school, in my primary school and seminary as well, which I took 4 years of seminary, graduated from it. Like I remember this and they took it away. And so I just think it's weird that they did that.
Yeah, I mean, they don't. I just feel like
Quakers.
they just don't want people to know about like certain aspects of it. But I don't think that they're saying that they
right.
don't believe it anymore, which is actually kind of more weird. So to say that there's no guarantee of moon Quakers or something like that, right when also the weirdest of societies talking about the moon being a base of 12 different alien, like this is literally outside of Mormonism. Just this week and everything we've been talking about. What are the different like species of aliens that they say live on the moon? We just had like a picture up.
No,
of it.
just Quakers. They just say Quakers.
No, they're supposed to be. Let me just find this thing.
They
They're
don't
supposed
do
to be
the actual-
there's the Greys, the Nordics, the Reptilians, the Arcturians, the
the
Mantids,
other
the
ones.
Syrians, the Anunnaki, the
the Quakers.
Andromedans, the Lyrians,
Pleiadi-
the Orions.
No, not Palladians, right? I don't
No,
know.
Pleiadians are the Nordics, basically.
Oh, there
right?
you go.
So
Okay.
the idea that there's like supposed to be a bunch of different aliens, very similar to Battlestar Galactica. There's some more Quakers on the moon.
They do
again.
say stars. Every star is a celestial planet, and that these planets all have millions of people on them. And
probably
this
Mars.
is yeah, this is like multiple comments about from all the different apostles, including Cowdery. You mentioned Pratt. You know, we've got multiple
Metaphysically,
comments.
Pratt's physically correct in saying that the amount of mass that exists. I mean, unless we're talking about created and destroyed mass in space-time foam or something. The universe has a certain amount of mass that is not created or destroyed but changed. So that is the same thing. I mean, that is the same thing as prototypical Mormonism. That everything is constantly being shifted into things, and also this idea of apotheosis, that consciousness is working together to collectivize and become more intelligent, and to know and use memory to move forward and predict. That's Mormonism. It seems
Cowdery,
like
even
space
Cowdery,
is,
one of Joseph's closest cousins and helper of actually with the Book of Mormon early on. And Cowdery even says it is a pleasing thing to let the mind stretch to contemplate all the planets, the moon, the stars, and all the revolutions are inhabited by intelligent beings. This was published in the Evening and Morning Star in 1833. So they talk about this openly. Yeah.
So the difference also, when people talk about the Quakers, right? Like Quakers just sounds like a guy with a funny hat, but like the Quaker society is, and this is something that the church, the Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints picks up on. They don't necessarily have a pope or I mean like a priest guy who talks and does his sermon from the pulpit. Instead, they have a bunch of people that can come and stand there from the podium, that everyone can choose to come and stand there. It's not quite without hierarchy, but the Quakers are completely without hierarchy. So in a Quaker church, it's just a big room. Someone stands up when they feel like saying something, and then they sit down.
Yes.
A kid will stand
anybody
up
could do it. A child can do it.
Who locks the doors?
Good question. I don't actually know. My dad
Who holds the key? Because
there is a janitor. No, I know the
there
question. There's multiple people with the key, and all of the higher ups have them that have offices, and the janitor. There's like a janitor that also would have the key.
Yeah, so I feel like Quaker, like the architecture of their civilization or their society, like that's something that's probably, I can imagine on the moon that they're hanging out like Quakers. Because if you had like a utopian civilization, you probably can't have too much of a hierarchy at that point.
Speaking of societies, how about the 10 lost tribes that flew from the North Pole out into space when the Earth broke apart? How about that one?
Who do you think they are? The Gemini or
no? The 10 lost
aliens?
Tribes.
Because
this is real.
What if what if all of these different tribes are related to different? Because they're different gods or angel races that are in. This is Battlestar Galactica.
Yeah, no, I get it. We're getting into the Divine Council, which I totally comprehend. I get that. But they do say the 10 lost tribes are nowhere to be found because Joseph Smith said they were living in the North Pole, but then the piece of that earth broke off, and now they have their own planet with that chunk of the earth that was shaved off. That's Eliza Snow's song that you were playing, what that has to correlate with.
So pull up the Flat Earth extra continents map. Flat Earth extra land. Hold on, check this out.
I wanted to ask too,
but they're gonna come back. Don't worry, they're gonna come back.
Yeah.
Can flat Earth be can that work with Mormonism?
100%. It actually solves all the problems, because then you
I don't know though, they always talk about
look at the broken off. Yeah, because we're in a snow globe. But look at the broken off continents. That doesn't that exactly describe this idea that there's land masses that are broken off, that have been pushed off beyond the ice wall? Here's the old moon. I just pointed it out on my screen. That's embarrassing.
That's where they
fell
live.
off the edge. That's what
yes,
happened.
They did. They did.
Yeah, bro.
Way to go. Yes, that guy. Way to go.
Well, because it's supposed that you're still supposed to be in a snow globe at that point, right?
True that. I do believe in that part. Yeah.
Right.
And so, but yeah, that's where they went. Just in case anybody was curious.
Which would make sense why it's a big cover not to talk about Cobol, because it's like
and
so much
also. Well, because in the temple ceremony, which I'm pretty sure nobody wants revealed, but Lucifer and Elohim actually have a conversation about what they're doing. And when Adam fell and got the knowledge, he said, "What are you doing?" And he says, "I have been doing that which has been done in other worlds." And that's part of the creation story. So that's just part of the temple ceremony that most people won't talk about.
But also, season 2 of the first Battlestar Galactica, where they meet like the weird angel guy who is like Mr. Mistopheles and the Prince of Darkness and all that.
Ibis, right?
Ibis. Is that right?
Which
the bird.
all of the OG Battlestar Galactica goes so hard into, ancient Egyptian mythology. Everything. That, like, even when it first starts out, I started watching like the original series. I'm so like, it's over my head. I'm just like figuring it out. But it revolves around this card game called Pyramid. They are playing with these like hexagonal tiles, but literally every tiny little detail in a Kubrickian way, right? Like everything was meticulously added to be about Mormonism or ancient Egyptian, symbolism or something very specific. It wasn't arbitrary.
Right. And that's also interesting that it's like so Egyptian because he's focusing on the Book of Abraham, and that they switched it from Kolob to Kobol. Yeah, I find that kind of funny because like he really wanted to focus
right there. Yep.
But I think again with the people were obsessed with space, so Tom Cruise.
Not Tom Cruise. We don't abandon our children. Sorry.
Yeah.
Yep.
It just wouldn't work.
Families are forever.
Sometimes to a fault, they don't abandon their own
Those
children.
cults don't last.
Families are forever. Yeah, we don't do that game.
But I still think that the space thing, that's the metaphor. That's what they're saying. Like, look, this is the part that we can approach people with, and then they'll accept that. But there's something more mystical about Kobol in the sense that you're thinking about a thing that might even just be like right here, but it's projected above you. So you're going to a space in your mind, right? In your being. And that's what they kind of describe in the Book of Abraham, that there's like 3 levels to get to.
I think it's funny that he didn't ever realize that it wasn't Egyptian and that it was completely Enochian. Like, it makes me giggle so bad because why didn't he know about John Dee? He should have. His brother went to Dartmouth.
I wonder if he just didn't want people to know. Again, with like, I think they just don't want people to know about things, so they don't say things.
I think you have to have the past, like Thomas said. You have to have the second anointing to know about these things. Maybe.
Plus, maybe I don't know how popular John Dee was or what people thought of John Dee.
Oh no, not popular. Not popular because he was totally ostracized by King James. What do Mormons use for a Bible? The King James Bible. So possibly that trying to push away. Yeah. Probably not a good idea.
I almost wish that the remake of Battlestar Galactica had leaned even harder into Mormonism.
I wish they all had suits with tags, like little tags.
I think it kind of does. If you think about like the persecution, the Mormon Wars is really what the series is about in a sense, because they lose Nauvoo and they don't know for sure that Salt Lake City exists, and they're going there. By the way, happy belated Pioneer Day! And they're going there on their way.
Yes, that was yesterday.
What is that? What's Pioneer Day? That's a Mormon holiday.
Oh, we had that yesterday. So it's the day
that's where
that
you
Utah
walk
was founded.
south of the Mormon Trail. So,
well,
Oregon Trail and the Mormon Trail are basically. If you played Oregon Trail, you had to go from Missouri to Oregon, but if you took the south side of the trail, it was exactly the same trail, and you just went and you stopped before you got to Oregon in Salt Lake City, and that's
you know what the Exmos call it now. They don't call it Pioneer Day. We call it Pie and Beer Day. No,
Pie and Beer Day. Yeah, it's true.
Now it sounds like this is also almost like a Utah celebration, and not even specific to Mormons. Okay.
Nope. Yeah, and it's a bank holiday and the whole deal. Yeah. It's the founding of the state.
But kids will dress up like, how Puritans for Thanksgiving kind of a thing. Kids will dress up. Like they'll wear bonnets. They'll go out.
They will do this trail, just so you know. They go on something called Trek. And when you're a kid, if you're old enough and your parents are cool enough, you can go on this. They actually take the hand carts and walk with the hand carts, dressed like the pioneers, down this trek, and it takes a long time. And I never did that because I was like, yeah, sounds dirty. I'm out. No, I like camping, but it was rough. Yeah.
And they'll be like, here's like you have to bring like a bag, like a paper bag. And like, this is all the stuff you would be able to bring with you on the
trip.
Just
like a pioneer. Yep. Yeah. You do the whole thing. And I was not going to do that one. I like regular.
Pioneer Day has the second highest holiday traffic fatality rate in Utah following July 4th.
Must be Pie and Beer Day.
Happy Pie and Beer Day.
See, I told you.
Wow.
That's funny.
It made the wiki.
Yes, it did.
Battlestar Galactica.
That's actually weird because most people don't drink, but whatever. I didn't know that.
Battlestar Galactica is definitely about that. They leave They're on their trip. They're on the Pioneer Trail. They're being murdered. The Cylon War is kind of about Christianity, you know, because they're saying like, hey, we're not Christians. We are Christians. Hey, like, oh man, I became a Mormon. I became a Cylon. You know, and then it's also this like the idea that you're becoming through apotheosis. Robots become humans is the metaphor for humans are on their way to becoming gods. And so there's a microcosm within a macrocosm, but also needed is Caprica, of course, because without Caprica, it almost like you have to see Caprica to understand both Mormonism and Babylon, and the
That's a
fall.
good yeah, that's a good
Well, but also
analogy.
transhumanism, because that was
the
because
fall
when
of
I
our
originally
society.
watched Caprica, before I knew anything about Mormonism or cared, right? I saw that almost like a ex machina sort of movie where they were trying to show like, is it bad to beat your cyborg? That's kind of what it amounts to in an oversimplified way, right? Like,
I don't know.
do they
Actually,
feel bad, and should you feel bad?
I wouldn't even. So for me, Caprica was like startlingly close to reality. They're like, hey, we're gonna make a sci-fi show about a planet with a secular society. There's a bunch of polyamorous, like not just polygamy or polygyny, just like there's like 30 people married in these like community like hives. They're worshiping
Hives.
hives. They're
You know.
worshiping they're worshiping gods. They're worshiping pantheons. There's different like cultures that are aware of different cultures and they're respecting these different cultures with their different gods. It's just it's interesting because that's not even like necessary. Like you can see the Mormon how that could happen, but it's also Islam or it's just the way the world is now. Like this is how the world is right now. A lot of the time in a lot of places like California and Caprica felt like really similar. In Silicon Valley, you know, you've got these people working in this virtual reality technology. In the beginning of the show, they're like, look how we're going to have L system algorithms so we can make these meta realities. It's just very much like, you know, it wasn't like far off. And they're saying, okay, this world's pretty similar to our world. It's like a little like a reflection of our world. And then I thought that was even like the bigger thing because then they create these robots and they're in material reality. They believe that everything is, you know, measured and that there's no soul. It's just also that you're not, you're not like transferring the soul. You're just making a thing like a egregore or like a homunculus. That's this robot. They don't believe in the soul, but somehow there is a soul. Whether or not it's the same soul or if it's like now it has the same memories as this person, but a new soul. There's soul that exists.
Well, and
right?
there was an argument to be made, and there was a video that you had sent me, kind of breaking it down. But it also reminded me of Rene Descartes and his mechanical animal sort of defense, and he kind of to grossly oversimplify it, he basically made this theory that consciousness can only be defined by ration. So if you were to sit down and try to just like rationally figure out if the person you're talking to or whatever the entity you're talking to has some sort of basis in logic or understanding, it was almost like a much better version of the Turing test, but maybe less defined. But it was like if it can rationalize itself to you as being fully conscious, then that's all that there really is to prove, and you can't go beyond that. And then he kind of got crazy and was like, and therefore dogs don't have souls, so we can torture them in public and stuff.
Yeah, see, see, and that's the very un-Mormon idea. All dogs go to heaven. That's very Mormon.
Yeah. Yes.
Is it really? That's wait,
Yeah.
hold on. So, do all pets go to heaven in Mormonism? Goldfish and
I'm pretty sure they think everything that has life.
what about what if you had
somewhere.
an ant farm? Does the ant farm make its way to heaven?
Yeah,
I
I think
mean-
any soul, anything,
So ants
everything
have
has
souls?
everything is made of intelligences, and every intelligence has soul, and so
That sounds very Rosicrucian.
sure, yeah, but it's also Buddhist or Vedic or Abrahamic, like you know, the whole world kind of, I think, looks at material as being made of energy, and Joseph Smith said that energy was soul, that spirit was soul, spirit was energy.
Have you guys seen The Expanse? Apparently, according to Ken, there's LDS references in the Expanse series.
I
And I
haven't
have-
read it yet. Someone just mentioned it to me yesterday, I think.
Oh,
so I
I'm
have
gonna
to
have
do
to
that.
check this out.
Well, that's synchronistic. Yeah, I mean, I think I've seen the first two or
I heard
three.
that
But
they have the biggest colony in space, I think is what they said, which makes sense to me that they would. You know, good job. Although I don't know, because I feel like the Vatican could do it too. Like the Vatican's, it depends on what they want. But the Vatican's pretty into space. They're pretty into metaphysics. They're pretty into all that stuff, and they're pretty esoteric about it too.
That's funny, actually.
Don't do that. Don't give Mormons
If
rum
he
and coke.
accidentally did it, then it's okay.
That's two things that they're not allowed to have. How do you accidentally give a Mormon two things they're not supposed to have?
I think they're allowed
They
to
can have
Coca-Cola now.
They can have
Yeah.
Coke. I keep trying to tell
how much did
everybody.
that cost Coca-Cola to get that one passed?
I think that was Mitt Romney.
It's never been banned. People just misunderstand the word of wisdom, and the word of wisdom is about. It used to be hot drinks,
except for hot cocoa.
Because but they changed that. I basically think this is what happened. Is Joseph Smith had a lot of meetings, and I think his wife was sick and tired of him spitting on her floor and having to serve coffee. That's it. I'm pretty sure that's where that came from. Really, they didn't have a lot of money.
No tobacco because it made you spit.
Yeah, are Mormons anti Lord's Supper with wine?
They don't do wine, grape juice.
But like, that's a funny one because realistically, the Mormons will say, like, first off, they use water now, and they used to use grape juice, so it's getting even weirder. But Mormons also Mormons also, if you read, like she said, like, if you read the Word of Wisdom, like Heidi said, there's nothing against effervescent things. It mentions making your own wines. There's precedent for Mormons to make effervescence, so it's
they can drink, but they can't buy other people's alcohol.
I think they're focusing on the wrong things here, because now all of a sudden it sounds like Mormons are turning wine into water, which is the opposite direction from where this all started.
They're turning wine into water. And Coke, let me just to say this for the people who keep commenting on Coke. There are very strict parents that take this to the letter of the law and like don't let their kids have cola. Or I had a neighbor that wouldn't let her kids eat regular bread, and she ground her own wheat every morning. You can get real wild up in here. Like, I mean, she also did some Shackley vitamins and all this stuff. And like, it was wild, but it's fine. They were very into health, and it's very health conscious. And I'm not saying that that's a terrible thing, but that's also been changed a lot over the years, which I think is not a good thing. Now they're adding cream to their sodas, and it's terrible. First of all, it's disgusting. Second of all, they're $8 a soda.
Yeah,
like it's gross. It's all bad.
The ice cream parlors for soda pop is really strange. It's a weird
terrible
idea. But like, you know, I think it was 2023 when Brigham Young University, on the anniversary of Joseph Smith's first miracle, Brigham Young University started putting soda machines all over their campus.
You know what's crazy is that
they turned water into soda.
Mormonism only predates Coca-Cola by 50 years, which is kind of an interesting little, like these two massive American sort of foundations of culture.
Why they outlawed it then? It had cocaine in it.
Yeah, that's why.
That's what I was wondering, is that it was cocaine infused Coca-Cola ever kosher for Mormon? Is there a word for a Mormon kosher?
No.
But like,
so I can say kosher, and that makes sense.
Yeah, we know what you mean. But word of wisdom is, they just say you're breaking the word of wisdom or not.
Yeah.
Well, you said before, if they follow it to the letter of the law, if you were a true Mormon, no offense to all the half-ass Mormons out there.
No Coke. It doesn't say Coke.
Yeah. Although there's no rule, like if you're a Mormon missionary in the 1920s.
Pull up the word of wisdom. There's only 12 of them, I think.
If you were a Mormon missionary in the 1920s and you were in the Bolivian mountains and you were chewing coca leaves to like climb the mountains and not die of oxygen deprivation, pretty sure they weren't going to be upset at you. And it's also probably reasonable to think that ancient, people continued to use those plants at that time as well.
Okay, well here's the definitive list, so we don't have to guess at it. So these are this is the word of wisdom, right?
I was trying to get to it.
Yes.
Fruits and wholesome herbs, including vegetables, which should be used with prudence and thanksgiving. I'm not sure how you prudently use a vegetable, but
there's a time and a place for everything.
Yeah.
But put the carrot away. It's not time for that right now. The flesh of beasts and of fowls in the air, which is to be used sparingly. Okay, I get that. Grains such as wheat, rice, and oats, which are the staff of life. So Heidi, when you said you knew someone that
I'm allergic to rice and oats. Yeah, I'm screwed.
So you're stuck with just wheat. So God help you if you also have a gluten sort of issue, right?
Yep.
You're
No
allergic
kidding.
to all kinds
All
of rice.
rice and all oats. Yes. Like
What about like
EpiPen, try to
what about like
die.
what about like wild rice that's not actual rice? Is that
It
okay?
it just
Does
shuts
that
my throat off.
does that mean you're
Brutal.
allergic to Quakers as well?
Brutal.
Yeah, I guess so. No Quakers for me. Good thing I didn't marry one. No, I'm just
The following substances are harmful: alcoholic drinks, tobacco, tea, and coffee. What about? And this is a real question. This isn't like a snarky question. But
no. This
what
is
about Juuls? What
You're
about
not
nicotine vape?
this isn't the actual words of wisdom.
Oh, it's not.
You're reading a breakdown.
like a synopsis.
Yeah. I would go to like is it DNC 89?
Original. Yeah, maybe original.
Yeah, go to DNC 89.
There we go. That looks more
This is it right here, right?
realistic.
But that's not the whole one.
Yeah, that seems
No.
short for what we're talking about here.
Can I get you? I got it over here. Hold on.
You got it? All right.
So, revelation given to Joseph Smith the prophet
go.
at Kirtland, Costco. Just kidding. February 27th, 1833. The use of wine. This is where that's where it's saying it's going to be broken down. A word of wisdom for the benefit of the council of high priests assembled in Kirtland and the church, also the saints of Zion. To be sent greetings not by commandment or constraint, but by revelation and the word of wisdom, showing forth the order and will of God in the temporal salvation of all saints in the last days, given for a principle with promise, adapted to the capacity of the weak and the weakest of all saints who are or can be called saints. So in other words, it's saying like, this isn't necessarily true for everybody. Some of you probably can handle your liquor and your hot drinks, but this is adapted to the weakest of all saints. And realistically, if everyone, who was super weak just stayed away from these things, they'd probably be safer. Behold,
Joseph Smith's father was a raging alcoholic, and so this was a whole situation for him as well. So
fair
It was
enough.
all like daddy issues to get woven into the religion.
a little bit. Just
Some
a little
say.
bit.
Some say.
And
Behold,
didn't you
verily.
say too that his wife just like someone spilt coffee on her couch one day, and then she was like, "That's
think-
it, no coffee for anyone."
It was very expensive back then, and I think they just didn't have the money to be serving it as many times as they met through the week.
That's pretty
What's the
fair.
first thing
It
you
was a
see
way
on
to save money.
fashion shows? Would you like
That-
some coffee? Would
That's
you like
brilliant.
some tea? Yeah,
That's
like
brilliant.
of course,
It
what I
could
mean.
be. It could be.
Yeah.
I mean, the tobacco spitting makes perfect sense to me. Like, stop
Yeah,
people.
that's
from
actually
spitting.
a well-known church fact, under the table fact, that all the old Mormons say that it was Emma because of the spitting, and it was
Yeah.
disgusting.
So does that mean that Mormons could use Juul vape pods then, because that's not really tobacco?
They
It's just
I think
asked-
Emma
like
wouldn't
they
have been
had-
as mad.
They have a living revelation kind of thing. So today they're like, we don't really want to like promote that. And so they say, we're not going to say that that's okay because we're not going to promote that. They're not really like, they don't really
They're
want
kind of
people to
against
do that.
anything
Yeah.
bad for your body
Yeah.
ish, except
Yeah.
sugar. They love the sugar.
It's kind of a nice boon for them that not smoking meant like people live 20 extra years and they can keep paying tithing 20 extra years.
Yeah.
What about GMOs? The
I
Mormons
I
have
mean,
a-
how do you avoid it? But they would say grow your own food if you could. Honestly,
Yeah.
they're pretty funny about that.
Yeah.
Monsanto seeds?
That'll come in here too. Behold, verily, thus said the Lord to you, in the consequence of evil and designs which do and will exist in the hearts of conspiring men in the last days. I think that's GMOs. I have warned you and beforewarned you by giving unto you the word of wisdom by revelation, that insomuch as any man drinketh wine or strong drink among you, behold, it is not good. Neither meat in the sight of your Father, only in assembling yourselves together to offer up your sacraments before him. So kind of like, it almost sounds like if you're going to drink, do it like socially during a ritual. That's kind of when we should do it, which is kind of a Catholic idea anyway. And behold, this should be wine, yea, pure wine of the grape of the vine of your own make. And so here people will say, okay, cool, organic wine. But no, LDS missionaries who are 17 to 18 years old are taught to tell you, no, pure wine means pure grape juice. Which at 6 years old, I couldn't help but laugh because it's not true, But hey, that's okay because otherwise I'm cool with it. The word of wisdom itself is fine. And again, strong drinks are not for the belly, but for the washing of your bodies. Well, guess what? Also weirdly true, like using rubbing alcohol. And if you look into the history of vodka, it was literally used to kill parasites. It wasn't supposed to be like something you drank until cocktails during the Prohibition, where they're like, we need the hardest drink possible that we can transport, and then we'll just mix it with some juice. So Interesting. And again, tobacco is not for the body, neither for the belly, and is not good for man. But it is an herb for bruises and for all sick cattle to be used with judgment and skill. So in other words, like you take a
Okay.
giant 30-inch tobacco leaf and you wrap a wound in it, and it does amazing things. Like there's
He's
a lot.
also very concerned about herbs and different things. Why he's very specific is because his brother died of an accidental overdose being treated for constipation. So this is
Yeah.
all like very seriously related to his
Yeah,
life.
and I think his brother might have had Crohn's disease. But you look
Yeah.
into some of these herbs that kill people. It's kind of funny. Vegetarians like are talking about how safe being a vegetarian. I mean, most of the drugs and most of the most dangerous things are not licking frogs' butts, bro. They're mushrooms and herbs. So you should be careful about like opium and all these like drugs that exist in nature. And at the time, like we were going into the West, we didn't even know like what we were gonna find yet, and there were like crazy things, and people were in the process of creating, synthetic versions of drugs. And that was the peak time. I mean, people don't even realize how much of civilization was lost in the late 19th century because of drugs. It was just crazy.
Funny enough, the Mormon Church's shareholdings are really involved in pharmaceuticals.
True that.
Anyway.
And that's kind of like an interesting point when talking about like vaping and amphetamines, caffeine, and all these other things is, how much do they feel about, like, they're definitely all about taking care of the body and organics, but they're also keen on transhumanism. They're interested.
And they like the pharmaceuticals, and like we have a huge overdose. We are like one of the highest overdose per capita on pharmaceutical drugs, like real, but they won't allow weed here. We're still one of the places where you will go to jail if you smoke a joint.
See, I don't know why I'm not here. It almost sounds like Mormons are pro Rockefeller medical.
Well, the church in Utah, which makes money off all of that, certainly is. I wouldn't say everybody else is. Again, here's
maybe not the original doctrine is what we're trying to say. The
Yeah.
original doctrine doesn't know anything about that, but now they're very into it.
Check this out.
But
And
the original
again,
doctrine does say that you're not supposed. I'm paraphrasing, I guess, but don't smoke tobacco because it's
well,
bad for
but
you.
hold on this. Hold on, check this part out. And again, hot drinks are not for the body or the belly. This is the only thing about coffee or tea really is the hot drinks.
Yep, that's it.
And some people say hot drinks really is more inference about like any sort of like vodka, any sort of what do you call it, distilled
Where
liquor.
it burns.
Yeah, like a scotch or like a fire drink. But they're saying it's just tea.
But
and here's the best one. And again, verily I say unto you, all wholesome herbs God hath ordained for the constitution, nature, and the use of man. Every herb is in the season thereof, and every fruit in the season thereof. All of these are to be used with prudence and thanksgiving. This is the part that really says you're not just allowed to, but like.
Does this not include opium?
This is, of course it does.
That would be, yeah.
If there's more marijuana, all of it,
but
LSD,
Mormon
probably.
Church, the Mormon Church will not let it happen. And if you go to church and you tell them that you've been smoking pot in the mainstream, they won't give you your recommend.
Yeah, but that
Even
also
if you cite this exact line, or is this not part of canon? Is this like some other?
This is hardcore canon, but it's hard to argue with the earlier part here. I think there's a part here that's talking about like assembling yourselves. Like there's a part where they want you to be in sound mind and body,
sober, in all times. Yeah, sober, like sober.
So, but what is sober?
I think some people are sober, smoking a whole bunch of stuff, and some people are sober.
Even if I wanted to join, I don't think I'd make it very long because I would be, picking this specific part out.
Hey, maybe they'd listen.
There's definitely, it doesn't use the word sober though. It says
like you're not supposed to be out of your mind. It's something about being in your mind, not.
But you can be having revelations and talking to Moroni from,
that's the angels.
Okay, here you go. And all saints remember to keep and do these sayings, walking in obedience with the commandments, shall receive health in their navel and marrow and their bones, and shall find wisdom and great treasures and knowledge, even hidden treasures, and shall run and not be weary, and shall walk and not faint. So, I mean, it's not, and I, the Lord, give unto them a promise that the destroying angel shall pass by them as the children of Israel and not slay them. I mean,
guess what?
There's nothing here that says that if you don't follow this all the time, they can't give you a temple recommend. That is a modern specificity and probably a brighamism.
Yeah, that's the mainstream. That's the mainstream because they have too much involved in the pharmaceuticals that everybody uses. And if they all got off this,
Which you
Z.
can have a recommend if you have Zoloft. There's
Yep.
nothing wrong with being a Zoloft and having a recommend, which is
You
crazy.
can get pharmaceuticals and be blitzed out of your brain and get your recommend, but as long as a doctor or gave it to you.
Which, yeah,
Th-
includes opiates, you know.
Yes, anything. Yep.
This might be a little tangential, but I almost feel like this was a dare. New NSA headquarters in Utah. Can we talk about that?
Yep.
Probably not. Well, yeah, I
Oh,
guess
boy.
so. So here's the Utah
Yep.
data center, which is codenamed the Bumble Hive, which is kind of a cool name.
That's
the,
adorable.
the Bumble Hive.
They must have
massive
fun there.
data repository designed to cope with the vast increase in digital data. So this is when everyone was like, they're not going to read all my texts and emails. They
Yes,
don't have
they
enough
are.
space or time. Well, I guess this is where it's happening, is in Utah.
Guess what? They
right?
do.
And don't they also have the biggest collection of like genetic data through 23andMe or Ancestry.com or one of those?
Well,
They just sold
Ancestry
Ancestry to
and-
Blackstone.
But they still own MormonSearch.org, which is the generator of all of it. So they still have everything goes through them, even though they've outsourced to BlackRock, if that makes sense. They still own the progenitor, like the parent. So
Blackstone, I think, actually. But yeah,
or
they're
Black.
Should we be
this-
more or less worried that this data center is within the vicinity of like the
I'm
high
always stoked. Like
population?
yesterday I was showing, let me go back to the thing. Like, we know the Don Cheadle, sorry, the SS Secret Service Cheadle lady.
Mhm.
You know, when we were looking at pictures of like the Secret Service, and you've got like 40-foot way, you've got like these like dudes that are rushing to Trump that you can't see, and then all of a sudden you see like where's that lady's face? Like, this sucks. Give me a second.
I could talk about something fun while he's finding that. Maybe.
Yeah, I just wanted to point out her face. Like, this is like clearly.
Oh,
not
did you
a
find it?
Yeah, it's just like, this is not
gotcha.
one. This is clearly not one of us. You know what I mean? Like, so, and then the Trump secret.
Ain't like us.
Shoot, let's see the video. Yeah, whereas like this guy probably is, you know, and like, so there's the ones that are where's the other one? That guy probably is. There's a few of them that are like, you saw all the ones that seemed like they were LDS were like 40 feet to 40 yards away, and then all of the DEI, you know, hires were right around him. And so the idea of there being more Secret Service and more NSA and more things in Utah, like, on one hand, it seems cool for the practical reason of them being sober and competent and 6 feet tall when you need to defend a guy who's 6 feet tall. Or also, like, having people
He's like
in the Midwest.
6'2", isn't he? He's
Yeah.
huge. He's big. Yeah.
Yeah, which is not tall for a president, I think, also.
True,
right?
true.
Yeah. Like, the Anunnaki
Not tall for
people.
me. I'm 5'9". That's all good.
That's still pretty tall. Like, so in Utah, though, also you've got, you know, there's probably a lot of women working for the NSA too, right? Because like they're good.
Well,
at
we've got the
watching computers and
FBI
monitoring.
here
Yeah.
as well, right down the road. In Davis County, we've got an FBI headquarters, let alone the NSA, let alone there. And I find it hilarious that they all dress like Mormon missionaries, or we dress like them. Whatever way it goes, that's
Yeah.
the way it goes. Yeah, I think it's funny.
Yeah, I don't think there's a problem with I'm more concerned with the opposite, like where it's not in Utah.
Yeah, some interesting things for sure. I don't know.
What was your
I
fun
take
topic,
care of-
Heidi?
Oh, yeah. Why don't we talk about how Warren Jeffs gets involved in space? Do we know about this?
No. Warren,
Okay.
okay.
I'm
Oh,
glad
boy.
I went down a different rabbit hole. Okay, so the astronauts, every astronaut that's ever gone into space is either a Mormon or a Mason. That's like a known thing, just so y'all know. And there's specific ones like
I don't
Don
know if that's
Lynn.
necessarily true. That doesn't sound totally true.
You might want to check that, but it's a widespread.
Well, Apollo 11
guess.
there was only one Mason, I believe, and then the other two guys were not Mormons, were they?
say. I don't
Okay,
know.
so they say space is real, right?
Right.
You can say
Who
that.
knows?
Okay,
But
go ahead.
we're gonna talk about the Challenger.
Only Mormons and Masons get to go to the real space.
Okay, that's
Yeah, there
okay.
you go.
With
That's
that
what's up.
qualifier, now I'm on board.
So
The rest of them go
there's
to the Capricorn 1 studio. Yeah.
there's 4 different connections of Mormons to the Challenger space disaster, and these go back to Warren Jeffs. And there was this manager of the space shuttle, and he was a Mormon, the NASA administrator during this time, James Fletcher, and he was a Mormon. So he actually sent out, the contract to build the O-rings to these for a very famous company here in Utah called Thiokol. People will recognize this, but Thiokol actually didn't get the adherent from themselves. They didn't manufacture the adherent. They actual company that made the adherent was the company directly under Warren Jeffs, and that is the piece that actually had the failure. And Fletcher gave them a warning and said, and that place was called Hydropack, ran by Warren Jeffs. And he told them, do not send this shuttle up. It will explode. Quote, it will explode. There is a problem with this adherent.
This literally is
anyway.
the plot for Capricorn 1, by the way. That is the plot.
Yep. So here it is. Yep. All back to Warren Jeffs, one of our sponsors.
So I didn't even realize Capricorn 1 is also a Mormon movie.
There you go. And you didn't say it, so I had to, and I laugh every time. It's not as funny.
Well, Capricorn 1, I think, predates the Challenger explosion, but it is the very plot is that they're sending these astronauts into space, but that they know there's a defective part. But in order for them to claim the defective part, it has two huge downsides. One is that the American people are like, well, where did our tax money go? Rabble, rabble, rabble. So that's one aspect of it. And then the other one was that they didn't want to lose profits for their partner who had made the O-ring. They don't mention O-rings, but it's like a piece. So yeah, they have to fake the whole Mars mission just because they need a free phase.
And we've seen these people from the Challenger that are still alive. Like they have a lot of conspiracy on that one, whether people were even on that.
That one still blows my mind. I want to be so skeptical of that, and I hate being persuaded by just images alone, and that's like 90% of that Challenger theory. But man,
there's a video with the woman. There's a straight video where they're trying to get her to talk.
What do you think, Andreas? Real or fake? The Challenger doubles.
I mean, I feel like if it was real, they would have launched Big Bird and gotten rid of him when they had the chance. So probably not real.
But then, what if they were easier to hide back in the day?
I'm still worried about like Capricorn 1. Like, is O.J. Simpson some weird Brighamite Mark of Ham thing? Like, what are they trying to say with that?
Well, and let alone SpaceX has total connections with Mormonism because Dallin H. Oaks is Elon Musk's boy, and their #1 shareholding of the Mormon Church is Tesla. Just so people know.
Really? Well, I guess because I would assume that they see the Neuralink and they're just like, oh, this is the next step in how we get to
they wet their magic underpants is what happened.
Jared Birchall is really important, right? Jared Birchall is the money guy for Elon in a lot of ways, and he's a BYU grad LDS. Jared Birchall's really cool. I like the idea that Elon Musk is surrounded in Mormons. I've seen him do like an interview with.
I think he's a secret Mormon. I swear.
He's got to be. Well, like I think a lot of Jews who are not super into like the Deuteronomist religion, like naturally are Mormons. They just don't know it. I mean, especially looking at like the Mormon cosmology, it's basically just at this point had been all these scholars at BYU studying ancient. And apocryphal Christian and Jewish texts. And so there really there's a lot more to it even than just the Book of Mormon, like because of that.
Oh yeah. Put the Book of Mormon with the Kabbalah and let him have a baby. It's fun time.
Wait, you're blowing my mind here that the CEO of Neuralink is also Mormon.
Surprise!
I guess I'm not super surprised.
Sorry, guys.
And also that Howard Hughes right-hand money man was.
Don't act like you don't know about Howard Hughes in the Mormons. Don't act like you don't know about Howard Hughes in the Mormons.
Howard Hughes helped build Las Vegas, which we're going to talk about Howard Hughes and the Mormons later.
Howard Hughes is my role model. Are you kidding me? I want to be Howard Hughes really bad. Like Howard Hughes is. I don't want to put jars of pee everywhere, but like, if that's what it takes. Howard Hughes is really interesting. He was a schizophrenic who had epileptic shock, epileptic seizures, much like our prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. And it's interesting that he was taken care of by these sobered Mormons. He had hundreds of sobered Mormons that did everything for him.
That
right?
were in the mob. They called them the Mormon mob, and we're gonna do a show on this.
There's no such thing as the Mormon mafia.
Just saying. Just
No
saying.
such
They helped build
thing.
Las Vegas.
You
No
just
such
that's
thing.
the first rule of the Mormon Mafia is you don't talk about the Mormon Mafia.
Oh, I remember
Yeah.
one time I was in Las Vegas and I met all of these kids and they're all just like on ecstasy and they're standing there and they're like, they look like blonde Aryan Ewoks. They're just like all out of it
Oh,
and then they're
that's funny.
super drunk and you're like, are you guys okay? And they're just like, yeah. And I eventually realized like we built all this. We're staying here. We're building all this for it's our family thing. And like, we just stay here like
We're all
on vacation.
blonde, white, and delightsome. All of us.
They were really delightsome, but it was just crazy. Like, yeah, I mean, because you think about that's a whole other thing. Because you talk about Cuba, the mafia, the CIA, the Bush.
Yes. We need to do a show on this. I've been telling him for months.
Because right, like
We
Thomas,
have to.
the mafia had Cuba, and that's why in Guys and Dolls they have to go to Cuba because it's like that's where you go. It's 90 miles from Miami. You fly down there. Everybody has drinks. It's all the laws. It's lawless, and like they can pay off the government. And they have Batista. Batista just flees. They leave it to Fidel Castro, and then the mafia has to go to Vegas, and Vegas is instantly like, how are we going to build Vegas? Who's going to build Vegas? Well, the mafia has to hire the Mormons who do a lot of the construction. So it's integrated. When people think of Las Vegas, they shouldn't just think of the mafia.
Mormons settled Las Vegas. Mormons settled Las Vegas first.
Yeah.
They were first to break ground.
Yeah. Pretty cool.
Yeah.
Can Mormons
It's a very
gamble?
cool
That
story.
sounds like something a Mormon wouldn't be able to do.
You're
No,
not in
you
front of
cannot.
another Mormon.
Yeah.
But
No,
like
yeah.
but like yeah, also I think the thing is you don't really need to gamble. Like so gambling, the idea of a gambling place is it has a lot of functions, right? Like you can wash money with a gambling casino.
None.
And that was what was cool with
Minimal.
that was what was cool with Cuba was that you could take all the money from all of the illegal illicit activities you're doing and say, oh, I won it in Cuba, and so Las Vegas is like that too. You can have a mobster go in and be like, oh, I won this, like in this circumstance. And you'd also have investments. Yeah. So the Mormons, instead of having like they're winning things, they can legitimately own investments in these buildings and businesses which are being rented out by these things. You're not allowed to like if you were to say, hey, I won $1 million, they're not going to want to accept that even in tithing because they're against gambling.
They won't accept any tithing from gamblings, and they really look down upon it if you did. And then also like that was why Hughes said he liked the Mormons so much and surrounded himself around them, because they didn't drink, they didn't do drugs, they didn't gamble, they didn't partake in that. Yeah,
he drank and did drugs.
Yeah,
but like he had to have, it's kind of like Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. There's always one sober one, so you've got to have he just had
you need a babysitter.
But
this touches on one of my favorite paradoxes of Mormonism in general, which is it's kind of summarizes like do as Joseph Mormon said, not as he did. Like, everything we did comes from embracing astrology, and it comes from this concept of like, I guess, treasure digging, but like he did it the right way, and he was the last person that can ever do it that way. And don't you try and do what Joseph Smith did, because then you've got too many Joseph Smiths running around writing, different books and stuff. So they have like, there's a practical reason to squash that, but it's so counterintuitive to me that like the one guy that's able to commune with, as I understand, Moroni is not necessarily an angel, but a legit extraterrestrial being. So he talks to this extraterrestrial being that gives him information, but then says no one else should talk to the extraterrestrial beings, or maybe the Mormon Church is the one that then retrofitted that and said,
Joseph did that because Cowdery started saying he saw things with his stones too, and then he was like, wait a minute. Listen, settle down. It's just me. And it's the prophet. He did sustain the prophet. So every time there's a prophet of the church, they can talk to God themselves.
Yeah. But even extraterrestrial being or not, like Moroni is supposed to be like a character of Apotheosis who was alive on Earth. And then, so sure, from Kolob, lives on Earth, becomes
Yeah, he's the ultimate big brother / mentor. He's like, look at how great you could be. I
not the
represent this thing
ultimate
that you could
one.
be.
Not the ultimate one. He's like he's maybe you could say like David or other biblical figures. It's the idea that hey, some of the Jews were in 600 BC forced to go through the collapse of the Jewish religion, and they were controlled by the Deuteronomists. They destroyed all their temples, and then all of a sudden they were they destroyed the Jewish temple. They had to go to Babylon, and they were enslaved, right? We know that story. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Here's another story of a group of Jews, because they're nomadic, and some of them went to Peking in China, and some of them went to Ethiopia. Here's a group of Jews that went to North America, and they went right before that, and so they still had a number of the beliefs that weren't crushed in the Deuteronomist reforms. That's the main thing. Is it anti-Mormon day on Andreas Xirtus today? Or
It's
you
definitely not
misunderstand.
I'm the
anti-Mormon
anti-Mormon.
Yes,
Only me.
Heidi's the poop in the punch bowl today. It's not me or Andreas. If anything, as always, I'm the one on the fence, and Heidi and Andreas are kind of fighting
Fence sitter
over
you.
me
You fence sitter
metaphorically,
you.
like symbolically.
I think Heidi has issues with like organized religion more than with theology and cosmology, and
I can see that.
Like
I can see her not agreeing to that.
She's a deep thinker,
I'm a
and
deep thinker. I don't like organized religion. He is correct.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of man-made hypocrisy in all man-made religion, and it's a bummer because people will say like the LDS faith is is it in apostasy or is it in perfection? I think like what's cool is there are still people that exist, and like you can like when you talk about the most objective thing of there are more people being made all the time, good people being made all the time, so that's a good sign. And can it be both? Can it be that there are problems in humans? And I mean, I think that's literally what everyone says all the time. They're like, well, this guy is not perfect and he's a prophet. So that's cool because that's really the direction that they should be going so they can figure out what is true and what we need to let go of. I don't know,
Yeah,
Thomas,
people aren't perfect. People are never perfect. It's always going to fail in every religion possible way. Like it's not going to happen. We're not God.
Thomas, you did a video with Heidi and with Jacob Isbell, right? Did you talk with Jacob? Yeah.
That was like the Magic Mormon Underpants video that we went into the detail.
So, like there are, I think what's interesting.
I tried to get him to come, by the way.
Oh, I should have hit him up. Was he busy? He's protecting his kids.
I think he's working. Yeah.
There are reasons why it's good for there to be an expanded view of these ideas. I like the idea of there being a broader. It doesn't have to be just people that are part of the Mormon Church, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, the Church of this or that. Like it should be that these are ideas that are being shared and talked about by all kinds of people. I like that we're extending the hand to talk to Jewish people and seeing how much that connects with their faith. I liked it when we talked to the Rosicrucians and talking to people that believe in like Afro-mysticism and Egyptian philosophy, how much that the book of Abraham is actually like similar to beliefs in Nigeria. Like those things are cool, right? And I don't think it's done enough. Most of the videos that talk about Mormonism, right? They're doing it from an ex-Mormon perspective and then an anti-Mormon perspective. I don't think it has to be both. I think you can be saying like, okay, I'm choosing to build, if Heidi's saying she's choosing to build her own belief structure, she doesn't have to abandon what she believes. And I see a lot of people doing that instead. They're just like, well, okay, throw everything away with the bathwater. And
which seems impossible. I don't think you can actually do that, which in itself
you just become reactionary. Yeah, you just have like, so these people are like, I'm not going to be a Mormon anymore. I'm going to make videos about how I hate Mormonism all day, every day.
Heidi.
Especially on Sundays.
I don't do that. Actually,
Heidi's
for me,
aren't that.
I just present ideas, and then I present facts.
Yeah,
but
and looking at the history, and looking at the history,
you're right.
But looking at the history, I think it's really that's the difference. Looking at the history and criticizing is different than saying I hate this.
I hate all Mormons.
Yeah,
I'm not about that. Yeah, no way.
It's
half my lineage. Yeah,
it's important. It's important to see like all of the flaws though along the way of things, and to wonder about them. I mean, like it's not I don't think it's necessarily poking fun to talk about Quakers on the moon, right? Like it's like, hey, let's analyze that. How did that happen?
There's one thing that always catches me up in every religion. It's not just Mormonism. It's also in like Catholicism. There was a great video that you pulled up on Think Tank a few weeks ago, but they were talking about like, no, Daniel, that's not the Trinity. The Trinity is like there's all these different interpretations of what the Holy Trinity is, and that anyone that believes in one particular one, like they're wrong because there's another version that disproves it. And Mormonism, though, feels very much like that to me, that every time that I feel like I latched on to something cool about Mormonism, I saw Battlestar Galactica, or I hear some little thing. I hear about Kolob. And I'm like, okay, no, that makes sense now. I'm actually, I think I'm on board. And then someone will immediately be like, well, we don't actually believe that anymore. And it's like, well, can you at least give me like a stable release version, like an LTS LDS, right? So that I don't have to keep focusing on this moving sort of target.
It's the mainstream. The mainstream bends too much to
I think the King Foley discourse, if you read Joseph Smith's King Foley discourse, which is his last speech, it's the summary of what should be, in my opinion, Mormonism. Now you could look at
which they put in the Journal of Discourses and said it's no longer relevant, which is terrible.
Yeah, this should be this should be in the quad. It should be a quint. It should have it should be an even thicker book, in my opinion. But realistically, you could also just print this as its own book, and people could carry this as a book and not carry the quad. And I'm boldly saying that. I think this book is pretty much the most important thing. If you've read the rest of it, and you read the rest of it, and you also continue to read, the Book of Mormon. But the King Foley Discourse, he says everything about apotheosis, about spirit of man, it's about spirit and matter in general, about how the universe was created, but how things existed before that. What the no thing is. This gets into some of the Ein Sof philosophy, the Kabbalah. This stuff is really deep, and
then they threw it out and said it was bad. And I'm like, okay.
Brigham was like, there's complications to this with Brigham's path. I think that's kind of the thing. But he also used a lot of it. Like the idea of becoming gods in apotheosis is a major point to Brighamism. I just think
is this controversial or debatable that individuals can receive their inheritance and be made equal with him
being
becoming
Jesus.
Gods,
him being Jesus?
They support the Adam God theory. No,
yeah,
they support that. That's what the temple ceremony.
But this doesn't mean the same as becoming the source Yahweh, because there's something different between the Elohim is plural, right? And there's a pantheon, and it's not a trinity. And Jesus Christ is the created Son of God and is a God, the son of the source, right? Is the embodiment of the source. So you can become like that because you are made of the source. You are the embodiment of the source as well. And in the Bible, it says you are co-heirs with Christ. So only just from the Bible and from what Christianity is supposed to be, not Book of Mormon or anything else, that's the idea, that your apotheosis happens because you are the spirit, And also, what is probably more Mormon is that God is anthropic in a lot of ways. Like you are in the shape of a God, essentially. Like man, the Son of Man, all this idea that Jesus is the Son of Man, that there's a humanistic, even in the celestial form, there's an anthropic aspect to it.
Does this include miracles? Like, do Mormons believe in all of the miracles of Jesus? Okay, so then being equivalent with Jesus means you also could heal the blind and turn water into wine and all that. Of
course, absolutely. Yeah, no question.
And another one of the videos that I was watching before this, I think you sent me part of it, was there was an atheist that was debating an LDS member, and the LDS member was going on a great, it was masterful in my mind, but he basically was able to get the atheist to agree with him that just on the principle of numbers alone, that there are other planets out in the solar system or other universes that have intelligent life, and that there would potentially be so many of those that theoretically one of those planets could have godlike beings, especially in contrast with humans. So therefore, there is, by definition, some sort of gods, like physical, non-spiritual gods out in the universe. And then if you believe that, then it would also correlate that you could, in theory, become a god in that definition. and he even got the atheists to agree with them on that sort of level, which was interesting.
Right.
But
Yeah,
is there something more to that? Like, isn't there like a spiritual component that has to be implied with being a god in Mormonism?
So matter is spirit moving slow enough to be seen, and that all energy is spirit. So everything is made up of spirit. So there is a celestial conscious or primordial origin before material form. So it's not that material is creating phenomenological diversity. It's that sacred geometrical structures are in divine, shapes, are in divine truth and divine principles are leading to furthered complexity.
No more stones.
Well, no, there are, because like here's a magic rock, with crystal here's a scrying mirror with crystals
Yes.
in it, right?
Fair point. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I don't know, man.
True that. Obsidian it is. Yes. LCD.
Yeah.
Liquid crystal display, y'all.
But also, I think we mentioned earlier, like the presidential assassination is relevant. First presidential candidate ever assassinated. There's the top hat that Abraham Lincoln, who was assassinated later, also wore the top hat because he was stealing the look because of the Illinois, commerce, Navy commerce.
Is it? I gotta ask this too. Is it Moroni or Moroni?
Moroni.
I like Moroni, unless you're from Argentina. Moroni, I think is okay in there.
And I asked that because I watched
and Italy, right?
Yeah.
I watched a documentary today that was released by the LDS Church, and in that they say Moroni over and over again, and I thought I was going crazy.
Bro,
No.
send me that. I gotta send that to some people.
It's
I guess
probably
I believe
not.
it was called "What Makes a Mormon." That was so when I first started this out, I was trying to figure out if there was like a list of Mormon astronauts because I've heard what Heidi said. Everyone that's been in the space, the Mormon.
I have some. Yeah.
Well, the
I have-
documentary was supposed to be about Mormon moon people, but it ended up not being about that. But they just kept saying Moroni over and over.
So
Yeah,
they
I'll
got
definitely
James
post that.
Fletcher, Ron Dittmore, Don Peterson, Rick
Don Lind.
Sear Foss, Senator Jake Garn has been up.
So Don Lind
also
was the
Don
main
Lind.
one that I saw.
Yes, and there was also who was it that was? I think Don Lind was one of the 26-year NASA flight director.
Right, he worked on
Ron
the
Dittmore.
Apollo 11
That was Ron
mission.
Dittmore. Yeah. So there's quite a few of them. There's one guy that ran it for 20
That's
years.
a real my own existence.
Fletcher.
I'm here, I'm alive, I don't worry about it. That's a real Hinckley Mormon.
Well,
there.
this is his actual testimony.
He was on a I'm a Mormon page. He definitely is a Hinckley Mormon.
So he has his own testimony page here on the fairlatterdaysaints.org site. But yeah, I thought that was kind of mind-blowing. Like, these are his words about being both an astronaut / NASA technician and a Mormon. My own existence, I'm here, I'm alive, I don't worry about it. There's a real world around me. I see it. I take it absolutely for granted. The sun will come up in the morning. I'm really sure that it will. It has never failed to do so. This is actually a great entrance into a hypnosis where
this guy drinks a lot of Pero, yeah.
And then he says, but here's where it gets interesting, because these ones are sort of like the obvious. The sun will always come up in the morning. I therefore believe it. But then it says, with equal confidence, I also believe. Our Father in heaven exists and loves us and watches over us. Jesus lived on this earth, performed great atonement, and is our Savior and Redeemer. And the church we belong to, LDS, is the Lord's true and restored church. So he believes that with equal amount of that, he exists and that he's here and that the sun will always rise.
Yeah. Yeah.
But the people will come out of it because there's thousands of people living on the sun, just so you know.
Yeah. There's got to be at least a few. Right?
So,
Yeah,
and he says that here's his example of why he believes Joseph Smith is real. This is his retelling of exactly why. It said, early 1830s, after the church was organized, Joseph Smith reported Moses had appeared to him in a vision and gave him authority for the Jews to return to Palestine. Hot topic these days. The Jews had been claiming for many years they were going to go back to the promised land, and even to this day, they celebrate the Seder supper at Passover. Tonight we eat the supper, or wherever that happened to be the next year in Jerusalem. And they said this for 2,000 years. And then he says, This he did without television cameras, without press corps, without telling the Jews. But after 2,000 years, something inspired this branch of the house of Israel to go home. So he's actually citing the Balfour Declaration as proof of Joseph Smith's prophecies in some way through old biblical tales from the Old Testament. Am I putting that correctly together?
Yeah.
So the Balfour
Well,
Declaration
We all
is
know
if you-
that
if
was
you
a
mention
grand
Orson-
mess up.
If
I
you mention
mean,
Orson Hyde, then you know he's going to be into like some meta prophecy. But there's truth to that too. Like if the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints is not of God, it will fail. If it is of God, you cannot stop it. That's kind of the vibe. And so he just if you go with confidence and you look around you and you see that good is being done in the world, right? That's his whole vibe. That's the whole idea. And I don't know, Hinckley Mormonism is interesting because it's very Zen. You don't have to worry about it. You don't have to be Gnostic. Like, you don't have to be like doubting Thomas and put your hands in the holes. You're just supposed to like be aware
in
of
the moment.
of bliss in the moment. And in a lot of ways, that is really beautiful.
I grew up in Hinckley times, so
Yeah.
yeah, it was a different time.
I mean,
we were more. We were
this
proud
being
to be more-
completely foreign to me. I hope it doesn't come across as like taking this the wrong way, but it almost sounds like that's the perfect environment for cult mentality, where it's like, don't worry about what it says, just go with the flow, go with the vibe, which kind of leads into I was just doing my job. Like that's kind of where that, right?
Well,
I mean,
maybe. I mean, so that's the thing. That's the cost of ignorance is bliss. But
Yeah.
then we're living in a time where we have a lot more criticism, and maybe the hope is that out of criticism we'll get to a sustainable place that we could go back to. We could go back to having faith in and trusting and allowing to go with the flow. I can see why people aren't ready to do that yet.
I
Hinckley
think
was
they
cool,
just
though.
need to quit lying. And this goes for every and Xirtus knows that this is how I feel about things. Anything that isn't fully on the table, I don't like, because I think people should have the opportunity to choose. And I think that's where I got really pissed off at the mainstream church, because they lie to people. And then you get there and like you said, you're like, what am I doing? Like you're just a yes, ma'am, yes, man. And that never sits well with me. But Xirtus knows that this is some of the things that I've said before that I think is good that could change. So
This could be you, but apostates want you unhappy.
Oh.
Why? Let's actually explore that. Why do apostates want you to be unhappy? Is that is that just a hyperbole, or is there a real
We're
mentality
going
in
to hell.
Mormonism?
Hell. We're going
So
to
just
hell.
misery loves company, so they're going to hell, so they want you there with them.
It's not real hell. Mormon hell is different than real hell. But
Yeah. I mean, the idea that Jesus went to, like, it's kind of a cool idea that, you know, you sacrifice a god, he dies, he goes down taking the sins of man, he's got to go to hell then technically. But you're a god, so it's like light in the dark and just cleans out hell. So now it's just this empty cavern that's probably clean, you know, no spider webs or anything. So that's kind of a nice, you know, but it'd be kind of boring compared
it's also
to being in the
dark
Celestial Kingdom.
and
Yeah.
completely void of anything.
So that was another thing that came up in the Mormon doc, and again, it was called to what makes a Mormon. But one of the claims that they made, they interviewed like 6 different people. Did you see this one, Heidi, or was I the only one that? Okay, you saved yourself some time. But yeah, they interviewed these 6 different people, and one of them makes a claim that I guess I'd never considered before. I'm not sure if I still agree with it, but that all the other religions that they had grown up in, and I think it was Roman Catholicism, that the reason that you believe in the religion is usually out of fear. It's like you don't want to go and get spanked forever by, you know, like a Satan in hell and you're burning alive, or you don't want to have
It's still
to
there
go
though.
back
They
through.
still shame you
I think
on that.
they
Well,
put that
say
back. I said they put
say
it back
Mormon
in.
doesn't have that.
They put it back.
No,
they put
they
it back
do.
in. They put it back in culturally. I agree with Heidi that culturally in Utah and in Arizona, God forbid you're there, they have these. They have these kind of, you know, witch hunts and cultural. Yeah, but not in the religion itself. If you look at Joseph Smith and what he said, it's more and more about how you can make your life better and you can live forever with each other, and there's nothing about hell. And he's built this kind of alternative to running from a nightmare towards running towards a dream. So that is that's not the way that they do it though, because they'll be like, oh, you have tattoos, or oh, and again, a lot of people will say this is only in Utah, though. I don't know. Like, if you're outside of Utah, do you think
Idaho
it's the same?
too.
Yeah, okay. But again,
Idaho.
outside of like the Deseret Brigham centric culture, I don't think it's as strong of a problem. Because if
I
you
don't know.
just
I grew up mostly in Idaho. Like really, honestly, my first 12 years were there, and I was born in Utah, and then we moved pretty promptly. I was about 2, but I'll tell you, the mentality is the same there. I mean, I think, like you said, Arizona. There's certain areas,
yeah,
right? Like
I feel
what
like
you said,
California and New
switching,
York are probably different. I don't think
Nevada.
I don't feel like
Um,
California and New York are the same as the Midwest. Like the mid the norm when people think of Mormonism a lot of the time, they're only thinking of the
Oh,
Brigham
God.
Church.
I'm just thinking an awesome reimagining of The Odd Couple, where they have 2 Mormon missionaries. One comes from the East Coast, one comes from the
Yeah.
West Coast, or something, and they have to pair up and convert, and they just go about it completely different ways.
Yeah, exactly.
I
This
mean,
guy's
I feel like there is a lot of people that come out of the Mormon church that are so hateful, like that cartoon you showed. I think that that's completely nonsensical for the future because all it does is make all the Mormons that were Mormon become atheists, and that's all not good either. It's either one way or the other, and there's no in between. Where I'm at is a very rare place for because my mom became a Christian before me and helped me out into a different mindset. Otherwise, that could have very well been me. But
I
I think it's important that we, as a collective people, not just Mormons, but the communities in general, do not ostracize people in general for what they believe, which is why I do the other show with Exmo Joe, who's not only an atheist and ex-Mormon, he's very left-wing, he's very opinionated on certain things that I don't agree with, but also he's a person that I really like. So I don't know why we have to be so weird to each other. Like
Well,
I don't.
I relate to that too, because a lot of people that I know that grew up Catholic, they either go all Catholic or they become like straight up atheist to the
Yeah,
point
or
where they're like
devil worshippers.
antagonistic. Yeah, oh, I
Yeah,
mean, I want to say as much as devil worshiper, but they become
here.
anti-Christian as opposed to just being atheist. It's like instead of just leaving it on the table and walking away, now they make their personality part
It's
of like
like the
making sure no one
daily.
else wants to
Yeah,
like it. Yeah.
I
you don't
feel
want to be
like
a Christian. Yeah, you got
I
to
feel
come out too.
I feel like that's also a weird thing because, we talked earlier about the Deuteronomist and like the idea of a pantheon. I've seen that a lot where the Christians are arguing with the Mormons and saying that they're different. And it's really weird because they're not there is, and even the atheists, there's room for all of it. The idea, like you just said, for atheists to find that something could, in a Warhammer case, evolve into a godlike thing, and that could have probability to repeat itself. That's not even separated from the idea that there's source, which is a non-anthropomorphic thing, which is kind of an atheistic way of looking at the universe. Like God has to deal with the laws of nature. God can't break the laws of nature in Mormonism. So that kind of says a lot too, which is you could connect that with atheistic science. So I feel like everything should, yeah. And someone here, Roy, is saying, is Mormonism a Christian heresy? Totally, because
Mhm.
Christianity
They don't
itself
believe.
is a heresy, right? Like the word heresy only means to make your own choice, right? It comes from school of thought, heresis, right? Philosophical sect. So Christianity is a heresy, and people get really upset because they're like, "Oh, the word heresy was used
I
by
want to see you
Christians."
perform magic. Also,
God,
I
right?
thought that one should have been featured.
I have seen him do magic, but it's only
I
off.
believe that Xirtus
It's
could. I
it's on the
actually believe it.
Patreon streams only. So if you're a paying
Yeah.
Patreon, you've seen Andreas do magic.
You gotta be careful.
Oh,
Though.
there you go. I believe it. He's magical.
What
He-
does Mormonism have to do about a ton or a 10?
Well, you could say like Atonism. So Mormon, I have a problem with how I push my beliefs that are separate, and I'll make sure that it's clear. Talking to pretty much any LDS, they're not going to tell you that Moses is Akhenaten, but I'm pretty sure that he is. The more you look at it, it's pretty clear that this idea of Moses happening at the, let's do the map again for the people that remember. Moses, what time in history is Moses? 1300 BC. Let's just do I'll pull up the map here, 13th century BC. Here, check that out. Yeah, Gordon B. There's a joke that Gordon B. Hinckley had parties. By the way, I saw that. Not joke, actually. There's an accusation.
Is this what you're showing? I can't
Yeah,
tell.
I was trying to go to here. So 13th century Moses, and the majority of scholars see the biblical figure of Moses as a legendary figure, while retaining that Moses or Moses-like figure existed in 13th century BCE, right? Maybe 1391 to 1271 BC. Okay. Akhenaten, that'll work. Akhenaten, 1356, 1336, 1351, 1334. It's like within 50 years, just about, right? So it's so close that it's almost impossible for me to imagine that it's not talking or referencing Akhenaten. And who is Akhenaten compared to Moses? Well, Akhenaten is someone raised from the Hyksos who becomes the pharaoh. Hyksos is a tribe that's taken over for a century several times before in history. There's a drought that happens right before this 200 years earlier. They end up buying all the property of all the locals. There's a guy named Yuya. Hold on. One more time. Open up my screen.
That's actually a weird true statement. No.
What, Utah is a swinger state?
You got to be careful.
Yeah, because in California they have to be dedicated, polyamorous. It's really weird how
terrifying.
Yuya.
Sorry.
Yuya was the sun priest of Heliopolis and the divine father, and most people associate with, well, Joseph in the Bible. So the idea that Joseph in the Technicolor Dreamcoat. So several centuries prior to Moses, prior to Akhenaten, this person, Yuya, is in charge. Which then you get to Atenism, because Akhenaten, he creates this religion. He forces everyone to leave Cairo to build a new city called Amarna, where they're now worshiping.
That's my husband.
MS-13 Mormons. The monolatry of Aten, the son of God. Right? So this is the beginning of the monolatry. There's supposed to be a pantheon. There's still many different gods. There's now all of a sudden the sun, the solar disk of God, is more important than any other god. And this is the only god that we'll have anything to do with.
So is this what Brigham was talking about, do you think?
I think so.
When Brigham was saying that we come from the sun, that Adam and Eve came from the sun.
Yeah. And that and even the idea of, Michael, like in Adam, and that this is the only god that we have anything to do with. Like there are other gods, but we only have anything to do with this. How long did this happen? Amarna, the city where they built, let me look up Amarna. Amarna was around for 40 years, just about. So you got 40 years where they've moved everything out of Cairo into the desert, and they built this city. And then the city's torn down, and then they're forced out. And they can't go back to Cairo because now they're no longer allowed because Ramses is in charge. And so the idea that Moses loses his eye, maybe had his tongue taken. These are several of the stories about how Akhenaten's taken out. And Akhenaten's like destroyed essentially. And they continue on, the priest class, northeast into the Canaans, which is where, Jerusalem and the 12 tribes are. And then that leads into the, building of the Jewish empire, the destruction of the Jewish tribes in the 600 BC, the Deuteronomists. So it's like there's this Stockholm syndrome of all the slaves in Egypt, the erasure of their Egyptian culture, their Sephardic, Semitic Egyptian culture, and this creation of a new religion, which is like in the Secrets of Nim, where the rats get rid of human culture. Like this Egyptian Semitic culture gets rid of its Egyptian roots and revitalizes itself in the desert. And out of that comes modern Judaism. Well, not quite modern Judaism. Prehistoric.
I think somebody mentioned too that there weren't certain books owned by the Smith family. I just want to say that the brother went to Dartmouth and was probably always bringing home books for a very sick Joseph that was still healing from a bad leg wound with typhoid fever. So I just think that there's not, when people say that he didn't read certain things because he didn't own it, you don't have to own a book to read a book.
Well, there
and
was
also-
also there was a book that we read recently for a previous episode called Magic and Mormonism or something like that. And the author of that book went to great lengths to show that there was a local bookstore that kind of specialized in old astrology and like mythological tales that was literally within walking distance from where Joseph Smith was. So
And
it's
Lumen
not completely
Walters.
out.
Yeah, Lumen Walters was also Emma's cousin, who was a traveling doctor who had just come back from traveling over to Europe. So he probably had a ton of stuff with him.
I mean,
like-
that's the thing. I hope so, because that's even more cool.
I think so.
If he had access,
I think so. I mean, I don't know.
it's not enough. I mean, it's okay. So it's like one way or another, whether it's just a kid who's a median who's picking up on the vibes of the time and the energies going around, or getting, divine message from that. A guy who's also, through the material reality of the universe, picking up on information that's been recorded and saved.
Yeah, it's too similar to Muhammad's story. It's too similar to Crowley's story. Crowley wrote about Joseph Smith being a moon child. On top of that, like, it's too close to all these channeled people, like, to just throw it out and say he was high on mushrooms. I think that's ridiculous. That's absolutely stupid. Like, when people say that to me, I'm just like,
I just think it's
I might be an anti-Mormon, but that's crazy. Like,
and I think also the idea that at 13 years old he was that well read, even if it's because he's got a broken leg and he's reading, Aleister Crowley and Tibetan mysticism. That is a base 13-year-old. I'm just, one way or another.
I do think he was a very smart. I mean, his mother was known as a Scottish healer, and his brother was super smart. I do think they were a very bright family.
But these bright valedictorians today are all woke and they don't know what's going on. They don't read the Tibetan.
But I think Manly Palmer Hall started writing his books when he was like age 17, and he got criticized for that in retrospect. But I mean, he was a very real. I don't think anyone's disputing whether or not Manly Palmer Hall was a real person or actually owned books or read books when he was 13, right?
Yeah.
I mean, look at President Kennedy. Like, he was super smart because he was sick as a child too. Like, he was cooped up in a bed, and they say that's why he was more well-read than anybody else in his family, because he couldn't do anything, just sat there. Well, that and the nurses. But anyway, we won't go there. Joseph was at home. He wasn't in the hospital.
Gypsy Rose and Bubble Boy. Those are going to be like the templates for the next prophets of new religions, because it's just about being pent up in bed and having all the time to read religious texts.
That's absolutely
she's
true.
pregnant now. Maybe she'll name it Christ.
It's actually, is it a solar baby or a moon child? Is there a difference?
Oh boy.
Bubble Boy prophet. I could really see that.
Depends. Quaker. Do you want to dress like a Quaker, or do you want to dress like an Egyptian?
I like the Quaker hat. The Koreans wear the Quaker hat. I've always been a fan.
See?
I'll try a top hat and see how I feel, because I always felt like a top hat would be practical for doing like Enochian
not a
magic.
white one though. I was so surprised it was white.
I like have you watched Holy Mountain, Jodorowsky's Holy Mountain yet? Get that
no
done.
I'll write this down.
Get that done. That one's Jodorowsky's Holy Mountain is all about Apotheosis. Just
maybe the kids aren't around for that one.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
John Lennon met Jodorowsky and found out he was working on the film, and he handed him like $5,000 in cash and said, "Call me when you need more money." So like, you can actually see in the movie where all of a sudden they get money. And the sets change.
It changes. Things are all of a sudden updated.
But it's freaking great. It works really well. And actually, for the point of apotheosis and self-manifestation, it's pretty good.
Somebody likes your comment. Get that done.
Yeah. There's a scene in the room of the chakras between the positive, like, hold on, I can find the picture of it. Holy mountain. With the two, the master and the initiate, and the initiate's wearing like a black hat, and then the master is wearing a white hat, and it's more than like it's like, this is the actual beyond the Quaker hat. It's like here, pull this up. It's like the Korean magician, the super tall, you know what I mean? That's the hat. That's the magic hat.
There we go. You're gonna wear one of those?
Yeah, that's the magic hat.
I think you should do a photo shoot with a hat like that and some rocks. A black one and a white one, of course.
I have
Even
a
though
black
his was
one.
chocolate.
We don't even need photo shoot. We just AI that thing into
Yeah, just
existence.
AI it.
Done.
It's more fun if you do it for real.
Yeah.
But anyway.
Is it? I don't know. That feels anti-Battlestar Galactica-esque, right?
I
That's the
love
whole
it.
premise,
That's
especially
true. That's true. All right.
towards the.
Thomas's way.
I mean, I would expect critical of transhumanism being an exmo and all. Do you
I
relate to that?
mean-
Are you anti-transhumanist now?
I am definitely anti-transhumanism. Just for myself, I just don't want to be alive and not be able to die, much like the Bible says.
Well, if you're transhumanist, you could shut yourself off, right? I mean, isn't that kind of?
But they prayed for death. I think that scripture is about transhumanism, honestly, that someday they'll be alive and not able to die and they'll pray for death. And I just think, I've had enough really bad problems in my life. I don't know if I want to do that forever. I'm good. I'll wait. I'll slumber. It's okay.
I mean, could Cylons turn themselves off?
Yeah, I think so. Well, maybe
They
you're not
could.
allowed to turn yourself off because I just watched Terminator 2 and he's not allowed to lower himself into the lava pit.
Well,
Yeah. See, I'm
Well,
worried
in that
about
same context, what I guess it's like an advanced version of a Cylon, but in the remake of Battlestar Galactica 6, and there was almost a correlation between
6 is the
Balthar-
number of Abba, right? Of father.
Well,
Gematria.
could 6 be a Moroni to like Joseph Smith being Baltar in that case?
I think that's kind of the Nephi Moroni reference, yeah.
I know this. Thomas, don't you and Juan dig me up and beat me with dog dicks. I will be very upset.
That was one. You do that one time to someone, and they think it's going to happen every time. We told you that was
No,
initiation. It only happens once.
It was just so funny. I had to. I'm sorry. That's nothing to do with Mormonism, people. Sorry about it.
I mean, it could, because after that step, then your body fills up with bees and explodes. And didn't we just
That's
find out
probably
that
what
the
would
new
happen.
Mormon NSA data center is called the
Yeah.
Bumble Hive? So
Well, this is the beehive state, sir. We do have the beehive on our flag. Everything's about bees here. You should take a look at downtown Salt Lake. You should come here. Like we said, Xirtus and you should come here and we should go do a thing. It'd be
we
fun.
figured out we could just AI ourselves there, though, and it's the same thing.
Oh, no, that's not as fun.
No,
Then we
it's not?
can't drink a
Okay,
beer
okay.
together.
See, that's your
Yeah.
anti-transhumanism talking, though.
I wanna do real cheers.
No,
I
I'm
don't
down.
drink
I
beer.
told you. I think that
I drink
my
bubbly.
plan for travel like that would be a Comic-Con. So I know there
There you
is a
go.
Salt Lake City Comic-Con. So that would
There
probably
is.
be around the point where I'd try and plan for that.
Oh, it's a big deal here. As you can well see, all of this, it is a big deal. I've never been to one, but boy, the people that go get into
Would
this.
would I do better if I had a pro-Mormon comic on display
Yes,
or an anti-Mormon
absolutely.
comic on display?
You could have both, but I would say pro at
Pro?
this point.
All right. Well, in that case, Heidi, you're not invited, but Andreas, if you
I
want to work on a
know.
pro-Mormon comic book,
I can be quiet and root for my brother. It's fine.
We can get her a disguise. It'll
Yeah.
get her a bonnet and some sunglasses.
That's right.
Little name
Nobody
tag.
knows me. I
We'll
look
give
like
We'll give
every
her some
Mormon lady.
platforms and a Quaker outfit, and she can be a moon Quaker.
Yeah,
I look like every Mormon lady out there. Don't worry.
That's true.
that might be the angle. Moon Quakers, I think,
There
is
you
something.
go.
There's something to it for sure.
I'm white and delightsome enough. Don't you worry.
Well, I think we're at a good natural spot to start winding down a little bit. Is there anything within the context of Mormons in space and moon Mormons or anything that we didn't touch on that we should for a part 2 or even a tangent right now?
I do think it's good to note that Neil A. Maxwell, clear in the 90s, did say, "We are not alone. Many are inhabited. This is a universe of order in which Kolob is set nigh." And that was in the 90s, and that's when I grew up. And this is what I remember. So I think that's good to put out there for people just to remember that Kolob was real at one
Yeah,
point.
it's
So,
the way that I look at that, it's like you grew up when, and I grew up when you could get toys in your cereal, and then they took those away, and people
Me
can't
too.
understand. And it
Yeah.
kind of feels the same way that you grew up with a little bit of Kolob in your cereal, and now kids can't get Kolob in this cereal. But if they
Sad.
did, it might have been more appealing.
Yeah, for sure. It was more fun then. Absolutely.
There's a lot.
Even
of
though
Mor-
I just had to have spirit babies. I mean.
there's a lot of I'd say Parley P. Pratt, Orson Pratt, like these read the Pratts, and
Yes.
I don't know. There's a lot of weird celestial magic that's beyond
I
just
have
like the
one
space.
quote
Yeah,
of
go for it.
Apostle Orson Pratt. Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, and Neptune, were all these made for nothing? No, that's the one you had to. So these were all kingdoms to which there is laws and journal of discourses. So these are all, and Pratt goes deep into this, but it's all about not being made for nothing when you get to Pratt.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot, but a lot of them also talk again like the luminaries, and that there's something more celestial about it. If you read a lot of the 1890, like Signe Rigdon, even said some kind of spiritual ideas of space, and I think it's worth like we talked at some point about Treasure Planet, which is a kind of Mormon's take on space, and it's not like I that's the way I would look at it. It's not space the way NASA shows you space. It's more like you're living in a space, and there's celestial realms and terrestrial realms and celestial realms.
Have you seen Treasure Planet, Heidi?
Yes, I've seen Treasure Planet.
Do you feel that there's a strong Mormon correlation within that movie of intergalactic treasure hunter?
Definitely, completely Joseph. So I don't know. They try to hide this. And it's not hidden. They should just put the tags on everybody and we'll know. The little Mormon elder tag. Just say elder. They don't have to put anything else.
Yeah, sure. We didn't even push it that hard when we were talking about it. But like the most logical conclusion is that Treasure Planet is about Joseph Smith searching for that treasure.
I feel like I was pushing that. I feel like that was my angle.
Pirate Kid treasure, by the way. That is the pirate's name that they were searching for. Pirate Kid. Just so you know.
Pretty exciting.
All right. Well, Heidi, tell everyone where they can find you for even more.
I have lots of Mormon stuff. That's for sure. Not all of it's bad, but I do like to focus on my Patreon, all about Mormons, mayhem and murders that were all done by Mormons. Doesn't mean they're as a collective of bad people, but it is interesting.
Murders. Some of those are good murders.
Yes. Hey, dude, some of them aren't murders. Yeah. Some of them are just mayhem, which is fun. Who doesn't like a little mayhem? That is at the Unfiltered Rise on Patreon. I'm also everywhere podcasts are served. You can find me all over the place at the Unfiltered Rise or Heidi Love. Thank you so much.
And who is Xirtus?
I am Andreas. I usually go Xirtus, but also Xirtus. And you can go to andreas.me or xirtus.com or youtube.com/Xirtus, or go on to the Twitter or X for the X Xirtus. Ha ha ha. Yeah, watch Think Tank with us on Tuesday.
Yes, Think Tank on Tuesdays. Again, this is monthly Mormon Monday. I don't think we've ever actually recorded it on a Monday. Usually they're pre-recorded and we air them on Mondays, but we do them live. And the only reason we haven't changed the name of the show is just because the damn theme song is so catchy. It would be a travesty to throw the baby out with the bathwater, but maybe there's something coming eventually. But yeah, come follow Paranoid American for more of this stuff. On top of that, the reason that we're doing all these different moon shows and moon themes and live streams is because I got a comic book coming out called NASA Comic, Never a Straight Answer, and I'll play a little outro commercial here as we wind down.
Wait! Before you do, Donkey Jaw Acolyte brings up a good point. You guys should check out the Picatrix. The Picatrix is like a really important Islamic...
I think Heidi brought up the Picatrix a few times too. Yeah.
Cool. All right. Make sure you guys get that book. Go read that book. Check it out online.
That's funny.
Well, I love you guys. Thanks for joining me for another one.
Much love.
Here's a NASA commercial, so you don't have to hang around for the whole thing, but I'd appreciate it if you did. And I'm talking to the audience. You guys are excused. Love you guys.
To Betsy.
Hey. Thank you for watching/listening to another episode of whatever you're listening to. Paranoid American Podcast, Occult Disney, Paranoid Programming, Sound Science. There's a bunch of them, but whatever it is, I appreciate that you're listening/watching to this right now. And if you really want to support Paranoid American, if you didn't know this, in addition to being a podcast, we've actually been publishing comics since 2012. So over a decade. While I was still at Disney, I started this company to publish a little book called Time Samplers, and it's exploded into 60 different titles at this point. And the biggest one just launched, at least at the time of recording this, but it's at nasacomic.com, stands for Never a Straight Answer, and it's about Stanley Kubrick directing the moon landings. And I just want to show you some of the cool kind of exclusive things you can get by backing this thing early. So if you go to nasacomic.com, it'll automatically bring you to this Kickstarter page. And you can see, bam, hit our goal at the time of recording this, 100%. So it's definitely going to be made. So you'll absolutely get a copy of this thing if you back it. If you're listening to this in the future and this page isn't here or brought you somewhere else, then likely you can just buy it right now. So just you have to skip all this and just buy the damn thing. But here's a couple little previews of artwork. Here's different variant covers that are for offered. This top left one, I actually have in print. I got a couple of prototypes printed up just to make sure that it would look good. It looks great, looks amazing, full color, gloss pages. It's got a nice hefty weight to it because it's 40 different pages of all unique art that you haven't seen before. There's also going to be a variant cover. There's going to be a foil, hollow foil cover. And then there's a little postcard print that anybody that gets a physical copy of the comic in any form, they're going to end up getting this postcard size print here. Here's some different artwork samples from the 3 different artists that contributed to this book. And then here's the important part, the rewards. So by backing this project, you're going to get to pick some different kind of reward tier. The entry level one is this digital deluxe, which has the entire book in digital form. You'll get a PDF. It's also going to have an additional 8 different pages that aren't in any of the print versions just because they were maybe some were a little too spicy, maybe some were a slightly different art style, but I'm going to give all that in the digital deluxe along with some wallpapers and some MP3s and stuff. If you want the print one that I was just holding up here, then the entry for that one is $15. With that, you're going to get that little postcard print I mentioned. You're going to get a trading card. You're going to get a bookmark, and you'll probably get some other stuff because I always throw in extra freebies. You can ask anyone that's bought anything from Paranoid American. I hook it up with lots of extras. If you want the variant cover, which is only available in this campaign, there's a $19 tier for that. It also comes with an extra sticker. If you want the hollow foil, then that one is $29. These ones are going to be super limited. Like these won't exist outside of this campaign for the next 30 days. So if you are listening to this in the future, sorry you missed out. You might be able to snag one in an upcoming campaign if there's extras. But if you really want this hollow foil, and you should, you can get it right now for $29. And then we've got a couple other tiers after that. We've got a 55th anniversary special for $55. That has the main cover and the foil cover and a sticker sheet and some other goodies. Here's the best value, basically. There's a $99 Cosmic Conspiracy tier, over 40% off of all the different things that are included. So this one's going to come with the main cover, the variant cover, the hollow foil cover, 3 or 4 different sticker sheets. It's going to come with 6+ stickers. It has the trading card, a bookmark. It has a custom Paranoid American Room 237 keychain. And I think the highlight of this is it's going to come with this custom embroidered Stanley Kubrick patch based on the Apollo 11 design. And if you keep scrolling down, you can see all the other extra reward tiers. All of the different items are going to be described in more detail. And I want to show you this patch right here. It's a 3-inch embroidered iron-on patch. You can put it on your Molex bag. You can put it on, anything, hats, backpacks. This is the first time we've ever done one of these custom patches, so I'm really excited about that. There's also a custom fake moon landing playset that you can select as an add-on when you go to check out. So speaking of, let's say that you're sold, you want to get a copy, you want to help support Paranoid American, you haven't used Kickstarter before, the easiest thing to do is you just click on this project button on the page. It's both at the very top of the screen and it's at the top of the page. So you can click either one, back this project. And from here, it's going to be like a typical checkout. You're going to select which of these different tiers you want. Again, I highly recommend this $99 Cosmic Conspiracy combo. It's going to have every single thing that the campaign has to offer that's exclusive to this NASA book. You click on that, you pick the country that you're in, and then you just click on the pledge button. There's one extra last step where it's going to ask you if you want to do any add-ons, if you want to throw in like a trading card pack or another keychain or anything else. You can get some huge discounts on the backlog of Paranoid American comics. But let's say you're done with that, you click continue. And then finally, if you don't already have a Kickstarter account, you'll be prompted to make one. You can link it to Facebook. The rest of the flow is just like any typical checkout online. So I really appreciate if you would take a look. Please just back the comic, back nasacomic.com. Anyways, back to your regularly scheduled programming.
Spread the word with propaganda packs, all for just $40 shipped at paranoidamerican.com.
Paranoid propaganda packs. We got facts on these sticker slaps. So grab yourself a stack and go attack with these paranoid propaganda packs.
These huge all-weather slaps will last in public for years to come. Remind citizens that birds are not real. Self-immolation is an option, and might make you magnetic. Do your part and get a propaganda pack today from paranoidamerican.com.
Yeah, paranoid propaganda packs. We got facts on these sticker slaps. So grab yourself a stack and go attack with these paranoid propaganda packs.
What are you waiting for? Go to paranoidamerican.com right now and get a paranoid propaganda pack.
Paranoid. Yo. I scribble my life away, driven to write the page. Will it enlighten your brain? Give you the flight, my plane, paper the highs ablaze. Somewhat of an amazing feel when it's real to real. You will engage it. Your favorite, of course, the Lord of an arrangement. I gave you the proper results to hit the pavement. If they get emotional, hey, maybe your language, a game, how they playing it well without Lakers. Evade them, whatever the cost, they are the shapeshift. Snakes get decapitated, matters the apex. Execution of flame you out, nuclear bomb distributed at war, rather gruesome for eyes to see. Max them out, then I light my trees. Blow it off in the face, you're despising me for what though? Calculated and rather cutthroat. Paranoid American must be all the blood smoke for real. Lord, give me a day away, vacate. They wait around to hate whatever they say. Man, it's not in the least bit. We get heavy rotate when a beat hits, so thank us, you're welcome. Fuck the niggas for real, you're welcome. They ain't never had a deal, you're welcome. Man, they lacking appeal, you're welcome. Yet they doing it still.